everybody, welcome to Drive Through Review 530. Today we're going to take a look at Deadzone. This is the second edition of Deadzone. It's a game for Mantic Games, 2 players, and it's kind of a combination of a miniatures game and a board game. So if you've been watching my channel at all the last several years, I've reviewed Dreadball and Mars Attacks, which uses a similar system to Deadzone. And like I said, this is the second edition. I have played the first edition, so I'll talk more about that in the review part of it. But this is kind of a sort of a mechanism or system that they've been sort of tweaking and refining over the years. Now the theme of the game is there are these dead zones, and there are for different reasons, these companies far in the future have sort of quarantined off these different areas. Maybe for nefarious means, maybe there's some kind of special resource or something there. And these different factions, there's different races. There's the Veermen, which are sort of like Skavens or rats. There's the Forge Fathers, which are dwarves, enforcers. The starter set here comes with a sort of set of Forge Fathers, which are the dwarves, and enforcers and pathfinders, which are the humans. And so you'll be taking these squads in it's kind of skirmish level miniatures combat, and trying to get objective points and wipe out the other team. Now there's a whole lot else to the game, but let's just kind of jump in. You can kind of see I've got some terrain set up. Let's just jump in, then I'll give you my thoughts at the end. So possibly the main sort of hook with Deadzone and several other of Mantic's games is this Battlezone Terrain. You can see I've built this here. This is all modular, so hopefully I don't knock anything over, but there's a little tower that I built here, and everything that comes in this set is a little bit like a ruins. So you can see they kind of clip together, and I'll try to show you sort of a close-up. It comes with these little clips here, and there's kind of 2 clips. There's like these sort of longer ones, and then there's those corner ones there. And so you can take apart these different things, and you can see I've kind of painted it very sort of decrepit. I kind of envision sort of the Alien or Aliens type of universe, with these sort of far outposts out in space that have been maybe left there for 50 or 100 years and so on. You can get little rubble and so on. And so you're going to set up this board based on sort of your choosing, but sometimes based on a scenario you might pick out. And then based on the scenario you choose, you're going to have different deployment zones. Now you can see, maybe if I zoom in better, you can see these grids here. So the movement is all grid based. So when you move from grid to grid, you're going to use the movement speed. And you can position your little figures here sort of behind wherever you want. So let's say this guy here could move 2 spaces. He goes 1, 2, and then if this was over here, he could say, oh, I'm going to put him maybe out here, or maybe behind there for some better cover, or so on. So again, depending on the scenario, you might have different deployment zones, different setups. You know, one guy might be the ambusher and so on. And then you're going to choose kind of a points-based squad. So this guy here is sort of the captain here of the Forge Father. He's got the little hammer there. And this is the captain for the enforcers there. He's got that special blade. And so you're going to choose a leader, and this book here, which I'll give you more detail on in a second, will give you all the squads and the way to build them out. So you're always going to pick a leader and then a certain number of troops, and then sometimes you might have a specialist, like this fella here might be a specialist here. He's got that big sort of bazooka thing, and they have lots of other stuff in the miniature range. Now this stuff here is just kind of stuff that comes with the starter set. So you're going to build a certain point of squad. You might take upgrades like this fella back here. Oh, this is the captain. I always get him confused. This guy's got the blade here. So you might give him, you know, a blade. And so when you build these miniatures, you want to kind of be a little bit mindful about kind of giving yourself some variety. So it's very much kind of a kit-based idea. Like you can see, I've got some leftover bits here just in case I get extras, and then, you know, maybe I can put this gun on the guy or something like that. I will say the miniatures I think are actually pretty good. You know, I've been putting together Games Workshop miniatures. The Games Workshop miniatures are much more expensive. If you go and look in a comparable, like buying a little starter squad of these folks versus, you know, something else in the other lines, putting them together was a little bit of a bear. The one problem I had is there was no kind of assembly guide. I had to go hunt down on a Kickstarter page what the assembly guide was for these, and it wasn't super clear or anything. I mean, it felt like kind of a super rough draft of that. So just be aware of that. If you're not really into miniatures, you're kind of like, oh, I'll get a board game / miniature game. I will put a link to the assembly guide in the video just in case you don't have to go hunt for it. But after I painted them and everything, I'm really happy with how they look, sort of. I'm not that great of a painter, but for me, I'm pretty happy. Now, I'll talk about some more details and the rules here, but ideally what you're trying to do is you're trying to control these different areas here. And like you might put a victory point marker out there. So every round, if whoever controls this area would get 2 points. I've got one up here as well. So you kind of will scatter these around based on the setup. But what you can do on your turn is a couple of things. You have short actions and long actions. You can do 2 short actions and 1 long action. So you might do a movement. So it might be, if you have 1 movement for kind of your walk, or if you had 2 movement for your walk, you would do that. And then if you wanted to do kind of your full sprint, that would take up your whole turn. That would be a long action. So you might be able to do like kind of a short movement and then a fire. And the fire and fighting is pretty much the same. So if you watched the Dreadball and the Mars attacks, it's very, very simple. It's a very cool mechanic, I think. So your baseline is you roll 3 dice when you're gonna shoot. So I'm gonna roll 3 dice and you have a target number. So if this dwarf here had a target number of 4, he would roll 3 dice. Anything that was a 4 or above would be a hit. So you can say I rolled 2 3s and then an 8. So I'd get 1 hit. Now the cool thing about that is 8s are exploding. So I would go ahead and roll another die. And if I rolled another 8, I would explode again. But you can see now I have 2 hits. So these are 2 successes based on my target number again of 4. And then this guy would roll his save or survive. And he would roll 3 dice, and then he would have a target number, maybe he's got a save of 5. So he would roll these, and he actually rolled really well. I got a 6, 7, 8, and the 8 would explode. So whoever had more successes would win. The damage going from this fella to this fella here would be the difference in successes. Now let's take some different modifiers. Let's say this was out of the way. And so he had a clear line of sight to this fella. He could see everything, including his base. He's then going to add another die there because he's got clear line of sight. Now if this guy up here was shooting, maybe you can't see him, but he's got this cool kind of, I don't know, it looks like a gas gun to me. So he's also got clear line of sight up here, and he's got a height advantage. So he would also add some dice here. And so you're gonna take in, based on those different modifiers, you're going to add or subtract dice, and then the similar thing with the fight. So if these guys were in the same cube here, this little region, then you would roll based on their fight stat instead of their shoot stat. So the baseline again is 3 dice plus or minus dice. So if you had a friendly in here, then that would add a bonus die. And sometimes there's different special abilities like Horde that may give you extra bonuses for extra folks in the cube. And you also will maybe compare the size. Sometimes these different models have different sizes, which are like the hit points. So you may add or subtract dice. Now, without trying to make it sound super complicated, this basically is your basic turn. So you've got this in the back of the rule book here. You can just photocopy that and print it out, or just leave it open there. And that's your turn. So you've got your basic actions here. You got move, sprint, shoot, fight, stand up, and then possibly a special action. So if your guy gets pinned or suppressed, they're gonna be rolled down, so you have to take an action to stand up. If you ever stand up in a same area here as the opponent, you have to immediately then fight. And again, you just roll the test. And so I just want to talk about damage real quick. So let's say this guy here was attacking him, and he had 2 more successes than this particular dwarf. So then he would have 2 damage coming at the dwarf. Now, the dwarf maybe has 1 armor, so it's going to absorb 1 of those damage, and then 1 of damage would be applied through, and then you would go ahead and mark it with a damage token. And the size is the amount of damage that it can take. So if this was a size 1, it could take 1 damage, and then anything above that would then kill it, and it would be removed from the board. And you're going to get victory points equal to the amount of victory points for the model there. So here we can just take a look at the stats here. So you can see it's got a movement of 1, but then if you do a sprint, it's got 2. It's got a shoot of 5+, so when you do a shoot chest, you need to roll 5. It doesn't have a fight stat, so it can't engage, and if it gets fought, then it's basically 0 successes. And here's its survive test, so if it's being shot at or fought. And then here's the amount of points it costs to put in the army and the amount of victory points you're going to get for it. Now I should also note that in this case, if it was being fought, then it would not roll a fight test, but it would roll a survive test instead. So if you roll fight against fight, then it's possible to do damage back to the attacker, the instigator. If you do a survive, then you're just trying to prevent the damage. A couple other quick things before I talk about generally more of the game in terms of movement is you can only have a size 4 of your models in a particular square here or a cube, and now each side can have size 4. And when you do movement, you can go laterally or horizontally. You can also go diagonally. You can also, move up as well, one sort of tick. So if this guy was way over here, you can see him, he could move one space up to here. Now, of course, you have blocking and so on, but if you look at this, if this is a solid wall, I couldn't normally just jump over because it's blocked. But if I do this without breaking it, you can see there's a hole there. And based on the sort of the percentage and the size of your model, you can move through that hole. Obviously, a larger creature could not move through that. But the basic turn structure is just that. It's very, very, very simple. Now, the first thing you're going to do each round is roll these command dice. Now, in the base box here, every side just rolls 3. But once you start playing into the full game, you're going to add what's called a tactician's value. So you may actually roll more than 3. So everybody's going to roll that. Now, you can re-roll as many of these as you want if you have 50% or more of your models remaining. Once you sort of are depleted, you don't get any re-rolls here. And these are different special abilities that you can activate during the round. Now, these actually kind of like replace the cards from the first Deadzone, the first edition. And spoiler, I kind of thought I wouldn't like this as much, but I actually think this is much better. So this is a cool thing that you can do. But let's talk about what are these different special actions you can do here. Well, this one here allows you to free move a model. So you can sort of get a free movement, then take your model's actual movement and then do something else, or maybe you do this plus a sprint and then he makes it extra far that turn. Let's see, this one here allows you to activate an additional model. So you can maybe activate your captain and then you use this one immediately so you can activate a model. Now, you can't do like 2 of these at once. You can't activate, like 3 models in a turn. And you also can't activate something with this that's already been activated as well. Let's see here. So here we have the splat here. This is different than the extra attack. There it is. So this one, your leaders are going to have different special abilities, and this is going to allow you to activate that. Now, this one here allows you to get an extra shoot action. So you can get a kind of a double shot. And similar, we have a free fight action. The model could get an extra fight action. And then if you want, you can spend this one to add another die to a test there, or fight or shoot. And the other thing to note is you can't like have multiple moves put on it. So I couldn't do, have 2 of these moves put on the same model when it activates. You can't do like move, or shoot, or a bunch of stuff like that. You can only activate I could do this though. I could have a shoot and a move plus the model's normal activation. And that's pretty much just the rules. There's a couple other little details here on modifiers and things, but it's all right here on this one page of rules. Let's take a look into the rest of the rule book though. You'll notice it is a hardback book, and if you really wanted to, like if the dwarves here didn't interest you and the enforcers here didn't interest you, you could just buy this rule book separately and then get maybe 2 starter packs of 2 other factions that did interest you as well. But it's a very well done rule book, not to spoil the review portion of this, but I really like the rules of this system generally, and it's also presented very well here. So it just kind of gets you going. It gives you a quick sort of starter scenario that you can play. Talks a little bit about that basic system again of sort of the base 3 dice and how that kind of thing works. And here's the sort of starter setup here. And then the rules are very quickly done. And then it goes through and talks a lot about the different special abilities, because different models will have these. You can take these as upgrades later, teleport, tough, which is sort of like an armor type of thing, different sort of ways to shoot. One thing I did not talk about is sometimes you can roll for suppression fire, and you're not trying to do any damage when you're kind of like spraying out a massive machine gun blast full of bullets, and you're just doing that to kind of suppress or pin that model and keep them down, so they have to waste an action getting up and stuff. And there's smoke screens, and so there's different items that you can get. Depending on the scenario, you might roll and place out these item tokens, and then once you move on them, you can find them and you'll be able to activate them. And sometimes, like in the case of this intel there, it will be victory points. You can get jump packs and extra ammo, allow you to take extra shots and so on. And then we're going to go into the different armies here. So this talks about how you build your strike team, and you, like I said, you choose a leader, and then you have to choose a bunch of troops, and for each troop you choose, you can choose a specialist. For each 3 troops you choose, you can choose a vehicle, and then again you're building these to a point limit. And you also have some different upgrades and items you can take depending on the sort of size of the army. You can take common, upgrades, rare, and then unique. And that gives you kind of a few different ways to play. And so here you've got the plague faction. So it shows you the leaders, gives you their movement stats and their special ability that again they can do when they activate the splat. And so that gives you all different ones. There's no plagues in here. Now here's the enforcers, and the captain that comes with the game is this guy here. And then you have what's called the assault enforcers, and then the pathfinders here, and then maybe you have some specialists that you can use. And it tells you about the different weapons that they can have, and you can get different upgrades as well later on. And so this is really cool. So you get all the different upgrades, and you can pick all that stuff out and really tweak it out. So this gives you enough to just, if you get into the game, you can just buy maybe another starter set for the Asterians, and then boom, you're good to go. You got all the rules for all those guys all in here already. And the cool part that I'm getting to here, let's see, you have also, here we go, the mercs. And these are sort of neutral units that you can take. They're named, they have different cool special abilities, and you'll be using these mostly in a campaign type of setting here. So once we get through to here, now this is really where I think the game kind of goes to the next level. They give you all the rules for the campaign. There's different scenarios that I think I skipped over, but you can play any of those different scenarios in here, and it tells you sort of how to sort of structure it. So most of the games were going to be like 100-point games, and that's just a handful of models. I haven't actually added up, but I think you could get 200-point squads out of everything that comes in this game. So you can kind of like ramp up your campaign. So you can start with like 100-point, then 150-point, and then, but what you're going to do is fill out this roster sheet here. Like so, you can scan that and fill it out. So you kind of generate yourself a pool of different soldiers and stuff that you can sort of quote unquote hire with resource points and different upgrades and stuff that they have, but you don't necessarily use them all in the game. And some of them may perish, they may level up, they may get what's called like a veteran status. And the game actually has, let's see if I can find it, here we go, sort of a catch-up mechanism. So if you have a difference in veteran level, you're going to kind of add up sort of the experience of the different squads. If I'm really far ahead of you, then you get 5 dice that you can add to individual checks throughout the game. And the mercenaries here come into play. And so you can actually hire these, and these will just go away in between games. So you can kind of have a pool of mercenaries to do. And so what you're doing is you're trying to get sort of like treasure. You go and get these resource points, and you use them and spend them, but you also keep track of how much you just collected total. You can spend as much as you want, but you can maybe play to a certain target. So once somebody's collected like 50 resource points, then they've won the campaign. And then you have these kind of in-between game things. So you might have casualties, you roll on this chart here, and then you have also, you get new abilities, and then you have this sort of exploration phase here, where you get to sort of generate a little bit extra treasure or resource points that you found, and then you have these different things that can happen, sort of like, I don't know, if you think of Mordheim or Frostgrave or Shadows of Brimstone or Warhammer Quest, that kind of stuff going on here. And then you have these, let's see if I can find one, these strategic assets that you can get. So if you get a strategic asset, it's going to give you these cool special abilities, but next time you play somebody, then if they beat you, then they can take control of that strategic asset and get access to that special ability. So it's a nice kind of thematic way to get into the game, because it's really small squad level stuff, and it gives you kind of a purpose and a reason, and it really adds to the theme of these sort of different mercenary groups that have gone into this Deadzone, and to try and get some resources and some treasure and so on. So that's kind of a general overview and gist of the game. Let's talk about what I think. Okay, so that's Deadzone. Well, what do I think of it? I love this game. I think this is fantastic. This is a game that I've kind of sort of been waiting for without really knowing that I've been waiting for it, because it fills this niche that I have of a sort of a compact sort of take with you miniatures game that you can travel with. Because all of this terrain and stuff that you can see here, this all just comes apart. And I can just, you know, snap it off, and then I've got little pieces there, and, you know, it takes a little bit of time to set up and build, but not a lot. And these little joints and stuff, you know, they clip in nice and it stays upright unless you knock it over. And it's really cool. So I've got this, like, I don't need to take a table with me. I can set this down and, you know, set everything up, play around with it, and then jump in. And the system itself is so easy to just kind of teach as you play. You just, you know, you'd say the simple test, like you're usually going to roll 3 dice, add or subtract, you know, some dice, or maybe you do like a specific test that it tells you how many dice you roll, and it gives you the target number, and you just roll a dice and get that many successes, and then I compare my successes to yours. So if I'm shooting you, I roll some dice, you roll some dice, I have 4 successes, you have 2, I've got 2 damage coming at you, the end. Or we're doing a fight or something similar to that. There's some other rules I didn't talk about, like with falling damage and stuff like that, but it's super easy to just go look that up and say, okay, well, he fell this far, so he's going to take this much damage, you know. So it's a very easy to get into system. It's also very different from, you know, these other miniature games where you like roll buckets of dice, you roll for hits, you roll for wounds, you roll for saves, you roll for this and that. It's all kind of very compact and easy to just make a roll, and then that's it. You're not rolling tons and tons of dice. The tactics of it are also very cool because, again, you don't have to measure anything. Everything's in these sort of square grids or squares or cubes, however you want to look at it. And so it's very easy to just, you know, see how far you can move and just kind of use the terrain naturally. So from like the board gamer perspective, that's very kind of refreshing, because the grid is sometimes just like you're counting 1, 2, 3, you know, grid. Okay, if I stay back 3 spaces, then this happens. So it gets a little bit, I don't know, a little bit dry in a lot of board games, a little bit dry, where this is a little bit more natural. Now, this is leading me to the terrain again, which is awesome. I definitely am going to get more terrain for this. There's enough here to get going and get started. But with this setup, you kind of have like one kind of layout you can do. There's like just enough in this. And I think that's fine. I don't want to sound like, oh, they chinched you on the terrain. I don't think they did, but I think it needs more, because at the price point, you get this, you know, nice hardback rule book. You get the minis, you get all the other stuff too, and you get a really good game, I think. So, but I think it needs that extra bit of terrain. But to keep the price point of the game, and I think it's about a $60 MSRP. I'm sure you can find it maybe cheaper online at Amazon or something like that too. But I think to keep that price down to more of an entry-level kind of thing, which is what a starter kit should be, they held back on some of the terrain. Now, there's definitely enough terrain here to play more than a few scenarios. But again, it kind of like, it wants you, and maybe they did on purpose, like, oh, it'd be really cool if I built like this big tower with a building in the center, and then there was more scatter around, so you can build more corridors and more, you know, different kind of approach vectors and all that kind of stuff. Now the campaign, I haven't played with the campaign, but it excites me. You know, reading through the rules and kind of, you know, having played the game and then working out how that's going to translate, I think that's a very effective way to play the game, and something that I'm very interested in. And that's kind of the other part of the niche that gets filled is, you know, there's kind of 2 approaches I see to sort of miniature gaming. It's like this big 1,000, 2,000 point battles. You kind of play competitively and so on. But I also, if you watch some of my other vlogs, you can see why this kind of hits that home, because it's a thematic sort of campaign setting. You build up kind of a narrative of your squad or your troop over a course of several games. You lose some guys level up, you get some treasure, you lose some treasure. So you build that kind of investment into the game, and it's got that whole thematic really that hooks into you. So that I think is super exciting. And based, again, I don't usually like to talk price point because I like to talk kind of the sort of the purity or whatever of the game. I think this is a good system for folks that want what I just said I wanted. Because if you go on their website, you can look and you can see you can get this game, and then you can get a starter set of the Veerman or I don't know, the Marauders, which are like the orcs. And depending on where you live, it's like this 30, 40 bucks, right? Depending on which country you're in. And so, and you get a good little squad of starter models that you can certainly field right away and build and play. And so if you wanted to go into the system with some friends, you know, somebody could get the starter, you've got 2 armies to field, and maybe a couple other people buy different ones. And then they have the concept of the booster, which is cool because it gives you like a whole nother set of models. So it's not like super confusing on like what to buy. You're not like buying single models a lot, but they do have that as well. So it's very easy to just go bam, bam, and then get small, concise packages that you can get and build and paint and do all that stuff in sort of a very digestible manner. I think that's a very good approach. So I think kind of beyond the box set here, there's a good solid system backing that. You know, I did gripe a little bit about putting together the miniatures. I think from my perspective, I'm not, you know, I'm more of a board gamer than a miniatures gamer. I think they're probably fine from somebody that plays a lot of miniatures games because like I didn't know, and it's kind of my own ignorance, I didn't expect all the kitting out that you could do. So you really want to think about, okay, so I'm going to use this guy with this gun. I need another guy that's got a big machine gun or an assault rifle, and somebody with kind of a bladed weapon or a hand weapon. So you kind of want to do that to give yourself options, because the rules are basically, hey, he's got this stuff built on, and that's what he's doing. You could fudge it. You can be like, well, that's a Gauss rifle and this is a pistol or whatever. That's, you know, it's your game, right? But I think you do want to build that so you can easily tell what's going on. So that's something that I wish there was a little bit more on the production side of that, where it's like, hey, here's a kit, and these are the different weapons that you're going to use, and this weapon is that, and this weapon is, you know, that's what this means. If you put this together, this is how you can do that. You know, kind of a how to put together guide. I think, you know, a lot of people aren't going to need that, but I think it would be helpful for the rest of the presentation to kind of go with that, because I think this is very much sort of naturally targeted towards somebody that wants to try a miniatures game or wants to get into the system, wants to learn about it. I think those kind of supplements would be worth it. I think they're necessary depending on the customer, right? So overall though, excellent game, very fun, very visceral combat. You know, it's got a lot going for it, and I think a lot of folks could really get into this as long as they're willing to put everything together and all that stuff, and probably paint it and everything. I think that's something that's going to be a lot of fun to do. The terrain is super easy to paint. I mean, you can paint it like a single color with like a wash, and then it looks like an old building, you know. So I highly recommend this game across the board. It was one of the best games that I played. I think the system itself has really been refined. You know, I was a big fan of Dreadball and also Mars Attacks, and this is really kind of the next sort of slight increment of a step in this system. So anyway, I definitely take a look at it. Thanks.